Good afternoon. As was just said, my name is Cecilie Larsen, and I'm a public affairs advisor at Ecommerce Europe. I've really been looking forward to being here with you today. So first of all, thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to speak on behalf of Ecommerce Europe. I will kick off with a brief introduction of Ecommerce Europe. We are based at the heart of Europe in Brussels, and we are an umbrella organization for the European digital commerce sector. We represent more than 150,000 online merchants from 22 European countries through our 24 national e-commerce associations, one of which is the Greek e-commerce association, Greca. Ecommerce Europe was established in 2012 with the mission to act at EU level to help policymakers create a better legislative framework for digital sellers in Europe. We're a small team of just 7 people at our Brussels Secretariat, dealing with a number of policy issues related to the day-to-day activities of digital retailers. More specifically, the day-to-day task that we perform entails monitoring of various policy issues, either in the shape of policy updates, newsletters, monthly reports, etc. Then we also conduct various types of advocacy work, from drafting position papers on key policy files that are important to the digital commerce sector. We formulate amendments and voting recommendations on specific files that we send to policymakers. We meet with policymakers, policy advisors, and other stakeholders to discuss our views on different topics and to hopefully influence the policy process. Aside from that, we also host regular meetings in our topic-specific working committees, just like we throw ad hoc meetings and workshops on. Yes. I'm so sorry. I will. No, it's fine. I'll just come a bit closer. Absolutely, no problem. Yes, as I was saying, we also throw ad hoc meetings and workshops on topic-specific issues whenever that is needed. In terms of the policy areas, we seek to address a broad spectrum of areas that our members deem relevant for their work. Some of the key policy areas that we cover are therefore data protection, consumer legislation, platform economy, sustainability, taxation, competition, logistics, and so on. Today I will walk you through some of the key policy developments coming from Brussels that are relevant to our sector. Within recent years, some of the key priorities for the European Commission has been the digital transition and the green transition. From an e-commerce perspective, this specifically means that the EU has made a big effort to regulate the digital economy with the aim of updating existing rules and proposing new ones to make sure that the EU's legislative landscape is fit for tackling the rapid development of businesses with everything that this entails, such as digital technologies and different environmentally friendly initiatives that contribute to the EU's circular economy. The EU's action focus on key areas such as platform regulations, consumer protection and empowerment, strengthening of the digital single market, and sustainability of supply chains, just to name a few. I will now highlight a few of these to shed light on the ongoing discussions and our work with it. As briefly touched upon, one of the key topics on the EU's agenda is the platform economy. One of the recent years' attempts of laying down a new legal framework for exactly the platform economy is the Digital Services Act, which was adopted last year and which just entered into force in November 22. The Digital Services Act seeks to update the framework of the former e-commerce directive that dates back to 2000. The aim of the DSA is to enhance consumer protection and ensure a level playing field within the single market by defining clear responsibility, accountability, and transparency rules for intermediary service providers that sells goods and services on online platforms to European consumers. Moreover, the legislation also entails specific obligations for very large online platforms, the so-called VLOPs. The DSA maintains 3 key principles from the former e-commerce directive, namely the country of origin principle, no general monitoring obligation, and the limited liability regime. That said, the new law also broadens the scope of the of the previous directive. For instance, the DSA introduces specific obligations known as the Know Your Business customer for online marketplaces to ensure better traceability of a trader that sells via a given online platform. In line with this, online marketplaces are now obliged to perform random checks on products, as well as they must enhance their notice of action mechanisms in order to combat illegal products that are being sold on platform, as well as to just in general tackle illegal content that is being disseminated on online platforms. Ecommerce Europe has been very active on this file during the negotiation process, and we are now closely following the implementation and enforcement process. We have, for instance, held a number of workshops on the DSA, during which our members could exchange their views on the implementation and enforcement in the individual EU member states with representatives from the European Commission. Here, our members have, for instance, raised concerns about the difficulty in calculating the number of active users for very online large platforms. Moreover, we have also been vocal about the risk of a fragmented implementation process across the EU member states and the impact that this might have for the sector. As touched upon briefly already, unsafe goods sold in the EU was already a hot topic during the DSA discussions, but this has since then been extended to a whole discussion of its own. Until now, product safety within the EU has been regulated by the General Product Safety Directive from 2001. However, the EU policymakers have now sought to update this directive with the proposed General Product Safety Regulation. In November last year, a provisional agreement between the different EU institutions was reached that lays down new and extended rules for product safety. The new rules broaden the scope of the old directive as it seeks to ensure greater coherence between harmonized and non-harmonized products legislation. Many aspects of the old directive does, for instance, not apply to harmonized products, as these until now has been governed by more sector-specific product safety legislation. But with the new General Product Safety Regulation, the safety requirements for products sold on the European market will be extended to different categories of products. Although the proposal is to be formally adopted within the coming months, Ecommerce Europe continues to call on the policymakers for greater alignment with existing product safety legislation. In line with this regulation is also the Product Liability Directive that was introduced in September last year. The Product Liability Directive is a new proposal seeking to update existing liability rules to make them future-proof and fit for the purpose of the EU's digital age and circular economy. Therefore, the new rules will cover new types of products such as digital technologies, including software, smart home systems, and a variety of digital services, with the objective to ensure greater legal certainty for businesses and manufacturers, as well as for consumers that might seek compensation for damage caused by unsafe products. If moving on to data, the proposed Data Act, which was introduced a year ago, constitutes a key pillar of the EU's data strategy. It aims to lay down rules on all types of data sharing activities by seeking to make it easier to access and share data regardless of it taking place in a B2B, B2C, or B2G context. Ecommerce Europe has been following this file closely as we have addressed our concerns to EU policymakers at various occasions. For instance, we have flagged concerns over how data and the different economic actors involved in this data supply chain are being defined, as well as we have questioned the conditions under which public bodies shall be able to access privately held data. We have also addressed unreasonable obligations for data processing service when consumers want to shift from one service to another. And finally, we have called out the EU policymakers for lack of legal clarity with regards to international data transfers, which are vital if European businesses are to be globally competitive on the data market. The latest updates concerning the latter is the publication of the US government's executive order from October last year, which seeks to address the EU's concerns of inadequate data protection, as well as the EU's so-called adequacy decision, which was published in December, which, on the other hand, seeks to assess whether the US executive order is actually addressing the measures, is actually addressing the EU's concerns regarding data protection effectively. At Ecommerce Europe, we are currently in the process of analyzing this adequacy decision to understand how the upcoming data privacy framework might affect the e-commerce sector. Another somewhat new policy field that is rapidly gaining ground at the EU is artificial intelligence, or AI. Last spring, the European Commission proposed its first ever attempt of laying down a legal framework regulating AI, namely the AI Act, which is characterized by being safe, secure, trustworthy, and focusing on ensuring fundamental rights. The proposal, which is still under the negotiation, is furthermore built on a risk-based approach that differentiates between prohibited AI systems, high-risk AI, limited risk AI, and minimal risk AI. Moreover, as the EU wants to become globally competitive on the AI scene, the proposal also entails rules on how to boost innovation and growth, for instance, by setting up a framework for regulatory sandboxes that allow businesses to test AI projects in a safe but still lifelike environment. Along with the AI Act, the Commission has also recently proposed the complementary AI Liability Directive. The rationale behind this directive is that the Commission has found the existing national liability rules to not be sufficient in addressing liability claims for damage caused by AI-enabled products or services. With the new directive, the EU therefore wants to create a new and harmonized liability regime, which can contribute to more legal clarity for businesses producing or selling AI-enabled products or services, as well as it will become easier for victims claiming damage for such type of products. Some of the key features that shall help simplifying the legal process for victims is the notion of rebuttable presumptions of causality, as well as the disclosure of information, which overall shall help alleviating the burden of proof that fall on these victims. If moving on to sustainability, Ecommerce Europe is also doing a lot of work within this field, again, as the EU seeks to enable the transition to a sustainable retail sector. One of the key files that we are currently following is the proposed Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation. This proposal builds on the existing Eco-Design directive, which only covers energy-related products. With the proposed regulation, the European Commission therefore aims to create a new eco-design framework for individual product groups, which shall help promote and improve product circularity, energy performance, repairability, the level of recycled content, etc. Moreover, the proposal also entails information requirements, including a so-called digital product passport, which shall help provide information about a product's environmental sustainability and overall help consumer and businesses to make more informed choices when purchasing a product, facilitating repairs and recycling, and improve transparency about a product's environmental footprint. That said, we believe that the proposals still have some shortcomings. For instance, in relation to the definitions proposed by the European Commission on second-hand products, as these might affect incentives for repair and reuse. So we are currently trying to flag these issues to policymakers, hoping that these will be remedied. Another key file under the sustainability headline is the proposed directive for empowering consumers for the green transition. As the title suggests, this directive shall enable European consumers to take more informed choices when purchasing products and strengthen consumer protection against untrustworthy and false green claims. As such, empowering consumers lays down a number of information requirements for products, for instance, on the product's durability and repairability. Again, however, we believe that this proposal also has some shortcomings, and we are, for instance, trying to ensure that the obligations of economic operators are attributed in a proportionate way that takes into account the role of various actors in the supply chains, as we would like the policymakers to avoid creating a disproportionate negative impact on second-hand goods. The final key topic that I will take you through is payments and taxation. On payments, the EU has recently introduced a proposal on instant payments, which shall enable European citizens to carry out real-time money transfers within just 10 seconds. With the proposal, the EU more specifically seeks to remove the barriers that currently prevent such transfers, such as costly fees, risk of fraud, etc. The overall aim is to bring about a number of benefits for consumers and businesses. For the digital commerce sector in particular, this proposal will allow for faster dispatch of goods purchased online, as well as it will provide improved cash flows for businesses, including SMEs. Another interesting development within the payments field is the EU's investigation into how to issue a digital euro. Currently, there is no concrete proposal on the table, but this is expected within the coming months. And the European Commission and the European Central Bank has already done a lot of work and research on this topic. Recently, the European Central Bank selected a small group of external companies, which is currently in the process of developing different user interface prototypes for specific use cases for a digital euro. So this is indeed an interesting project to follow ahead. Last but not least is taxation. One of the key files that we deal with at Ecommerce Europe is the proposed single EU VAT registration, which has been proposed in order to address the shortcomings of the previous VAT e-commerce package. In 2021, the latest VAT e-commerce package did not manage to address the issue of multiple VAT registrations for sellers holding stock in different EU member states than their home country of registration. So Ecommerce Europe is therefore very supportive of the new proposed single EU VAT registration, which will also be valid for inventory movements and onward sales so that businesses can use a unique VAT registration for every cross-border B2C sale in the EU. This also means that businesses selling to consumers in different member states will thereby only be required to register for VAT purposes once for the entire EU, and they will be able to fulfill their VAT obligations through one single platform in one single language. So this is indeed a step forward compared to the current rules in place. I know that this was a lot of information in a very short time, but I hope that this brief overview at least gave you a bit of a clearer perspective on the plans and developments that the EU has for our sector. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your attention.
True, there was a lot of information in a very short time. So before you leave, is there one or two questions? One. Okay, fine.
Hello, my name is Konstantinos. First of all, sorry for my English. You talked about taxation. So here's my question. When we send a package to UK, our buyers are paying huge amount of taxes. How this European Union will stop it? Is there an agreement between UK and European Union so our clients, our shoppers, can stop paying these huge taxes or reduce at least?
I must admit to you, I am by no means our taxation expert. So I would have to redirect you to my colleague who works on that. I would assume that since the UK and the EU is still a huge market for each other, that there is some upcoming plans, but I don't have any, I cannot confidently tell you what the current rules are, sorry.
You can connect perhaps on LinkedIn and send her over the question. Perhaps that's a much better way, right?
Yeah, if you find me, I can redirect you to my colleague who will definitely know how to answer.
Because it's a question that a lot of people has. Okay, we have another question here as well. That will be the last one.
Hi there. My name is Elias. I'm from Sweden and half Greek as well. So I have a question regarding, I'm doing dropshipping, by the way, e-commerce and digital marketing. And right now I'm building brands across Europe, in the Scandinavian countries and also here in Greece. And since my products are from China, I have a question regarding how can I make sure to create a certification that they are sustainable products with the products that are from China to sell it here in Europe.
Well, that is some of the current negotiations related to the eco-design, for instance, that there should be like a clear framework of how you define products, especially those coming from third countries, whether they live up to EU rules for sustainability. But there's not like a final discussion on this or conclusion on this yet. It's still under discussion. But yeah, there are rules underway that shall create a framework or like a scheme that should make it much easier to assess whether you can call your product sustainable or not.
Okay, thanks very much. One more, applause for Cecilia. You were right. Too much information, very short time. I know it's difficult, but sometimes to digest.